Gucci, man, he just authorized a new Pooh Shiesty album to be released while Pooh Shiesty himself can't get a release.
That might be the coldest power move anyone has pulled in rap in a very long time. And the craziest part is that Pooh Shiesty basically set it up himself without realizing it. Gucci outmaneuvered Pooh Shiesty using Pooh Shiesty's own music, his own deal, his own career. And the way it all unfolded is one of the strangest stories the entire music industry has put together in years. An artist allegedly tried to escape his label situation, and instead of breaking free, he ended up more locked into that same machine than ever before. His music is still flowing through the exact business structure he reportedly tried to burn to the ground. Once you actually trace how Gucci ended up holding that kind of leverage, the whole thing hits on a completely different level. So, stay locked in, because this one is worth understanding from the very beginning.
Locked up. So Gucci is getting his money, Pooh Shiesty can't get his freedom, and this is like, a full 360 where we gotta say, call Gucci a snitch, but he's a smart.
Welcome back. Today we're breaking down exactly how the label relationship between Gucci Mane and Pooh Shiesty went from a genuine major label opportunity to a federal kidnapping case, and then somehow landed in a place where Gucci is releasing Pooh Shiesty's album through the same business structure Pooh Shiesty allegedly tried to destroy. There's a lot of layers here, so let's get into all of it. To really understand how this situation even became possible, you've got to go back to where these two actually crossed paths in the first place. Pooh Shiesty, born Lontrell Denell Williams Jr., came out of Memphis, Tennessee, carrying a sound that was raw, aggressive, and deeply rooted in the culture of that city. He had the streets locked in early. What he needed was the right platform to take that energy to a national level. That platform came through Gucci Mane's relaunched 1017 Records. This was the label Gucci rebuilt from scratch after surviving his own serious legal battles, and it became one of the most respected imprints in the entire trap music world. Pooh Shiesty signed to 1017 around 2021. And from that point forward, the infrastructure supporting his career changed completely. He was now backed by a label that had Atlantic Records as a major distribution and business partner, which meant his music moved through the same pipeline that major labels use to push their biggest artists to every corner of the world. That kind of reach doesn't come overnight for a young rapper out of Memphis, no matter how talented he is. And the music connected fast. His debut commercial project, Shy Season, dropped in February 2021 through Atlantic in 1017, and it debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 right out of the gate. Features with Lil Durk, Gucci Mane himself, Big 30, and 21 Savage helped cement him as one of the defining voices coming out of Memphis at that moment. The momentum was real, the numbers were real, and the future looked wide open. But before that same year was even over, Pooh Shiesty was sitting in a federal courtroom facing firearm conspiracy charges out of Florida. He ended up serving more than 3 years of a 5-year sentence before finally being released in October 2025. And during all that time away, something interesting kept happening. His music didn't stop moving. Shy Season kept growing. His streaming numbers stayed alive and in some cases climbed. The audience he built before he went away didn't disappear, and the business structure around his catalog just kept running without him. That's where the story gets really interesting, and that's where Gucci's leverage started to quietly build into something much bigger than most people noticed at the time. When he walked out in October 2025, the first thing he did was drop a track called FDO, short for First Day Out. It shot up to number 12 on the Hot 100, making it the highest charting solo record of his entire career. For a brief window, everything pointed toward Pooh Shiesty being on the verge of his biggest run yet. The demand was there, the timing was right, the culture was ready. But coming home after years away from the world has a way of shifting your perspective completely. You start seeing your numbers differently. You see your streaming revenue, your cultural reach, the way people are responding to your name, and suddenly the contract you signed back in 2021 starts to feel like it was written for a different version of you. A smaller version, a version that didn't have leverage yet. So you start doing the math. You look at what your music is generating across platforms, across streams, across sync deals and placements, and then you look at what's actually landing in your pocket after the label takes its cut. That gap, when you start to really see it, can be infuriating. And allegedly, that exact calculation is what pushed Pooh Shiesty toward the decision that would flip his entire situation upside down. Now, before we go any further, let's be completely straight about what we're working with here. Everything that follows comes directly from federal court documents and the allegations made by prosecutors. Pooh Shiesty has pleaded not guilty to all charges. His trial is currently scheduled for February 2027, but the allegations laid out in those documents are specific, they're detailed, and there's a significant body of evidence prosecutors say backs them up. So, we're going to walk through exactly what they claim happened, step by step. According to the federal complaint, on January 10, 2026, 3 music industry professionals were flown out to a recording studio in Dallas, Texas. They believed they were attending a legitimate sit-down, a business meeting to hash out the terms of Pooh Shiesty's recording contract with 1017 Records. That's what they were told. That's what they expected. One of those 3 people, identified in court documents by the initials RD, is described as the owner of 1017 Records. Multiple major outlets, including the Associated Press and CNN, identified RD as Gucci Mane, whose legal name is Radrick Delantic Davis. So Gucci Mane and 2 associates boarded a flight to Dallas, thinking they were about to sit across a table and talk business. What prosecutors allege they actually walked into was something completely different. Federal authorities claim that Pooh Shiesty had arranged that meeting specifically as a setup. Once all 3 men were inside the studio, prosecutors allege that Pooh Shiesty, along with 8 co-conspirators, carried out what they describe as a coordinated armed takeover. Some of those co-conspirators had reportedly traveled down from Memphis, specifically to be there that day. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't improvised. According to the government, it was organized in advance. Here's where it gets even more striking. Prosecutors allege that Pooh Shiesty pulled Gucci Mane aside and asked to speak with him privately inside the recording booth. Just the 2 of them. And once they were in there, Pooh Shiesty allegedly produced paperwork, pre-printed contract termination documents that he presented to Gucci Mane while the situation outside was being controlled by the other men involved. Let that sink in for a second. This wasn't a spontaneous argument that escalated into something dangerous. According to prosecutors, those documents had been printed just hours before the alleged robbery took place. Someone had prepared them. Someone had sat down, written them out, and printed them with full knowledge of what was about to go down. The demands listed in that paperwork were sweeping. Prosecutors say Pooh Shiesty was demanding the immediate termination of his entire deal with 1017 Records, the release of every contractual obligation attached to his name, full ownership of his masters and all associated intellectual property, and the direct transfer of 1017's approval rights with Atlantic Records over to Pooh Shiesty himself, at what the documents reportedly described as his sole discretion. That's not just an artist wanting out of a bad deal. That's an artist allegedly trying to seize every single piece of leverage his label had over him in one move. The masters, the Atlantic relationship, the contractual freedom. All of it handed over under circumstances that federal prosecutors describe as criminal coercion. The demands tell you exactly what Pooh Shiesty allegedly believed he was owed. Not just freedom from the label, not just a cleaner split on royalties. Everything. The masters, the publishing, the Atlantic deal, the creative control over every corner of the music business infrastructure that had been built around his name. This wasn't some back and forth, negotiation. This was a straight-up demand for a total transfer of power, and Gucci Mane allegedly refused to put pen to paper. That's when things took a turn that nobody could walk back from. According to prosecutors, Pooh Shiesty pulled out an AK-style pistol, also described as a Draco, and aimed it directly at Gucci Mane's head. That's the kind of persuasion that doesn't leave much room for debate. And under those conditions, Gucci Mane signed the paperwork. But the story doesn't stop there, and honestly, this is where it gets even harder to believe. According to the federal filing, a signed document wasn't enough for Pooh Shiesty. Prosecutors allege that he then had Gucci Mane recorded on video, verbally stating out loud, on camera, that Pooh Shiesty had been dropped from his label. Those are the exact words prosecutors say appear in the footage. While that video was being recorded, The rest of the operation was running in the background. His co-defendant and fellow Memphis rapper, Big 30, whose legal name is Rodney Wright Jr., allegedly filmed that video on his cell phone. At the same time, another co-defendant was reportedly blocking the studio door with a firearm, making it physically impossible for anyone in that room to leave. Nobody was getting out until this was done. And while all of that was playing out in one part of the studio, the other co-conspirators were allegedly robbing the remaining two victims in a separate part of the space. The government says the total haul came to approximately $450,000 worth of items. That includes Gucci Mane's wedding band, a watch, earrings, and cash pulled directly off his person. One of the victims was reportedly choked to the point of near unconsciousness. These weren't people being inconvenienced, they were being terrorized. Some of the stolen items allegedly ended up on social media shortly after, which, as bold as that sounds, is also exactly what helped investigators start piecing the whole thing together. When you're flashing stolen jewelry online after a federal kidnapping, you're basically building the prosecution's case for them. Now, there's something a lot of people in the comments have been coming after Gucci Mane for, and it deserves a real honest conversation. The criticism is that Gucci cooperated with federal investigators. Let's not dance around that. He did. But here's the full picture. All 5 victims and witnesses in this case gave statements to the government. Every single one of them cooperated fully. And when federal prosecutors have a willing victim who also happens to be one of the most well-connected, well-resourced figures in Atlanta rap, with serious legal representation behind him, the case doesn't just get built, it gets built fast, and it gets built tight. Pooh Shiesty also wasn't doing himself any favors. He was nowhere near a free man when all of this allegedly went down. He'd been released from prison just months earlier, in October 2025, and that release came with conditions, specifically home confinement and an electronic ankle monitor. That monitor was transmitting GPS data the entire time. Federal law enforcement had location data placing him at that Dallas studio on January 10th. There was no alibi play available to him. The investigative trail didn't stop there. License plate readers allegedly tracked multiple suspects traveling together in a convoy, making their way from Memphis to Dallas in the days leading up to the incident. Rental records allegedly tied one of the vehicles directly to Pooh Shiesty's own father. And the co-defendants who allegedly showed off stolen items on social media handed investigators even more evidence to catalog and build on. It was one thread after another, all of them pulling in the same direction. By late March and into early April of 2026, all 9 defendants had been arrested. Federal kidnapping charges were filed in the Northern District of Texas. That charge carries a maximum sentence of life in prison, and that's not a technicality or an overreach. That's the actual ceiling for what's on the table here. Pooh Shiesty was ordered held without bail, meaning he sat in a cell while the rest of this case began to take shape around him. The judge pointed to 3 specific things when making his decision: the volume of evidence stacked against Pooh Shiesty, his prior criminal record, and the fact that he had already broken the terms of home confinement once. Because of all that, Big 30 walked out on bond. Pooh Shiesty did not. And a big part of why that happened comes down to cooperation, specifically from Gucci Mane and the other people in that studio that night. Out on the streets, some will hear the word cooperation and immediately call it snitching. Inside a federal courtroom, that same act has a completely different name: cooperating witness. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Cooperation can be the thing that turns a borderline case into a conviction, or the thing that keeps a shaky case from falling apart entirely. It can also be the exact reason one defendant walks free, while another sits behind bars waiting for trial. The difference between a case that gets dropped and one that buries you for life often comes down to whether the victims show up and tell the truth. Pooh Shiesty allegedly walked into that studio believing he was taking control of the situation. What he actually did was hand Gucci Mane a federal case wrapped up and ready to go. Every move he allegedly made that night worked against him, and the cooperation from the people in that room only made it worse. But here's the part that people don't talk about enough: what that cooperation actually meant on the business side of things. Because Gucci Mane didn't just walk out of that studio as a crime victim. He walked out holding every card in the deck, legally and financially. Let's get into what that alleged forced release actually looked like from a legal standpoint. In the music industry, a contract termination that both parties agree to freely can wrap up a recording deal in a clean and enforceable way. Both sides sign, both sides walk, and that's that. But a contract signed at gunpoint is a completely different animal. It isn't a voluntary agreement. It's a document allegedly produced under duress, under the direct threat of immediate physical harm. And the law treats those two things very differently. A document obtained through coercion and criminal force doesn't carry the same legal weight as one signed freely. It can be challenged as void, meaning it never had legal standing to begin with, or voidable, meaning a court can throw it out. But what makes this situation even more striking is that the document's existence didn't help Pooh Shiesty at all. It actually became evidence of a crime. That paperwork he allegedly forced Gucci Mane to sign wasn't a business resolution. It was Exhibit A in a federal criminal case. Think about that for a second. The very thing he allegedly used to try to free himself from the 1017 label deal became the physical proof that prosecutors needed. It didn't liberate him from anything. It locked him in. And here's why that matters beyond just the criminal charges. If the alleged forced release contract is legally void, then the original 1017 recording agreement doesn't disappear with it. It stays in place. Every right the label held under the original deal, every clause covering recordings, masters, and future releases, potentially all of it remain legally intact. The alleged coerced paperwork didn't erase Gucci Mane's contract claims. It just made Pooh Shiesty's legal position dramatically, almost irreversibly worse. So now let's step back and talk about how record deals actually work, because you need this foundation to fully understand the financial stakes here. Without it, the business side of this story won't land the way it should. When an artist signs a recording contract with a label, they're entering into a structured business arrangement that touches several different areas at once. Masters, publishing, advances, royalty splits. All of it gets defined in that agreement. The label typically owns the master recordings made during the contract period. That ownership is the foundation that everything else is built on. Whoever controls the masters controls the money those recordings generate. Publishing is a separate but equally important piece. It covers the underlying composition of a song, not just the recording itself. And it generates its own income stream through things like streaming, radio play, and licensing deals for TV, film, and commercials. Artists who don't pay attention to their publishing situation often find out the hard way how much money moves through that channel. Then there are advances. A lot of people hear advance and think the label is paying the artist out of generosity or goodwill. That's not how it works. An advance is a loan against future royalties. The label fronts the money up front, and the artist has to pay every dollar of that back through their earnings before they ever see a personal royalty check. Until that recoupment happens, the label is technically still in the black on that artist's deal. Understanding that structure is key to understanding exactly what was allegedly at stake when Pooh Shiesty walked into that studio. Traditional recording deals typically put royalty rates somewhere between 15 and 20% of qualifying revenue after recoupment. But that percentage is almost meaningless on its own until you actually trace what gets subtracted before that number is even applied to anything. Here's how the math really works. Streaming platforms take their share off the top first, then distributors pull their cut. Producer points get deducted directly from the artist's royalty pool before the artist sees a single dollar. Management fees come out of the artist's overall income. By the time every one of those hands is reached into the pot, the difference between what a project actually generates and what ends up in the artist's bank account can be staggering. We're talking sometimes a fraction of what most people would assume. That gap is precisely what Pooh Shiesty was allegedly sitting with when he concluded that a standard contract renegotiation simply wasn't going to cut it. And the frustration apparently ran deep enough that he allegedly decided to take a completely different approach. Then on August 7th, 2026, a 16-track album called All Eyes on Shiest hit every major streaming platform, released through 1017 Global Music and Atlantic Recording Corporation. The same label structure, the same major label partnership, the exact same business relationship Pooh Shiesty allegedly tried to dismantle at gunpoint, while he sat in federal custody without bond, with a trial date sitting 8 months out on the calendar. His music was streaming freely and generating revenue like nothing had happened. So, let's sit with that for a second. How does a label turn around and release an album from an artist who allegedly robbed them and who is currently locked up in federal prison? The answer is actually straightforward once you understand how contracts work. A contract that the artist tried to escape through coercion isn't a valid termination. It's just a crime. The original 1017 deal was never legally dissolved, which means the label held onto every single right it had under that agreement, including the right to release any music recorded during that contractual period. The alleged robbery in that studio became its own separate criminal matter, handled in a federal courtroom. The business agreement itself, that survived completely intact. Now, here's where the real story lives, and this is the part that deserves full attention. Under a standard major label recording deal, the kind Pooh Shiesty allegedly had with 1017 and Atlantic, the label owns the masters, not just a license to distribute the music, not just a revenue share arrangement, the actual recordings themselves. Every song captured under that contract belongs to the label's catalog as a hard asset. That's not a gray area or a point of debate. That's how virtually every major label deal works for a developing artist coming up through the industry. And that ownership structure is exactly what Pooh Shiesty was allegedly trying to reclaim when he showed up to that studio with that pre-printed contract demanding full ownership of his masters and his intellectual property. He wasn't just asking for better royalty splits. He was going after the recordings themselves, because that's where the long-term money actually lives. So, when people say Gucci Mane owns most of Pooh Shiesty's music, that's not an exaggeration or industry gossip. If the original 1017 deal was structured the way the overwhelming majority of major label contracts are structured, and if the coerced release document was legally void the moment it was signed under duress, then 1017 controls the masters on everything Pooh Shiesty recorded under that agreement. Shiest season, every single, every feature that fell under the label umbrella. And now, All Eyes on Shiest joins that catalog too. Think about what that actually means. That's years of recorded music, years of streaming revenue, years of sync licensing potential, all of it sitting inside Gucci Mane's business entity. While the artist who created it sits in a federal holding facility with no release date on the horizon, the catalog keeps earning, the artist keeps waiting. When a new artist signs to a label through a joint venture setup, like the one between 1017 and Atlantic, they're typically looking at somewhere between 15 and 20% of net royalties after recoupment. That number sounds fair on the surface, but the moment you actually trace where the money goes, the picture looks very different. Walk through a real example. Say, All Eyes on Shah's pulls in $3 million in total royalty revenue during its first year of release. That's a strong number, right? Except Spotify and Apple Music are immediately taking roughly 30% off the top before a single dollar reaches the label side. That one cut alone drops the working pool down to about $2.1 million before anyone at the label even opens a spreadsheet. From that $2.1 million, Atlantic collects their distribution and label share through the 1017 arrangement. Major label distribution deals can carve out anywhere from 15 to 30%, depending on the specific terms negotiated, and those terms rarely favor the newest name on the roster. By the time Atlantic's cut is settled, the pool that 1017 is actually working with might be sitting around $1.5 million. And the deductions aren't done yet, not even close. Production costs come out next. Marketing budgets that the label fronted for the album, any other recoupable expenses they covered during recording or rollout. Those all get pulled before the artist royalty calculation even starts. Then you have producer points, which typically run between 3 and 5% of the master royalty per producer attached to the project. Every producer credit means another percentage carved away from what the artist's royalty rate is being applied to. By the time all of that is sorted, Pooh Shiesty's 20% royalty isn't being calculated against that original $3 million figure. It's being calculated against a base that's been chipped down significantly through every layer of the process. And here's the part that really stings. If Pooh Shiesty still has an unrecouped advance balance sitting on the books from Shiesty season, or any earlier deal activity, every single dollar of his royalty share goes straight toward clearing that balance first. He doesn't see a cent of personal income until recoupment is fully resolved. That's not a loophole or an oversight. That's the standard structure written into the deal from day one. An artist could sit on a project that racks up hundreds of millions of streams worldwide and still walk away with nothing in their pocket while the clock keeps running on that recoupment balance. That is the system. That is exactly how it was built to function. And that is precisely the structure Pooh Shiesty was allegedly trying to break free from when he walked into the Dallas studio. The outcome of that decision couldn't be more brutal. He's now locked into a contract he cannot renegotiate from a jail cell, releasing music he cannot tour behind or actively promote, generating revenue that could take years to actually reach him, depending on where his recoupment situation stands. Meanwhile, Gucci Mane's label continues operating the machine, collecting the label side of the income and running the business with or without the artist whose name is on the project. Gucci Mane, for his part, didn't respond the way most people in his position might. He didn't call a press conference. He didn't post a lengthy public statement laying out his side of things. He made a record. In April 2026, shortly after the federal charges became public, he released a Beethoven-produced track called Crash Dummy. The song entered the public conversation around the alleged betrayal almost immediately after it dropped. Without getting into the specific lyrics, the track is widely understood as Gucci Mane's direct response to someone who allegedly used a business meeting as cover for something far more dangerous. It's a pointed, deliberate move. Let the federal case carry the weight of the story, and let the record serve as the commentary. That's not a reactive play. That's a calculated one. It's the move of someone who has operated in this industry long enough to know exactly how to let a situation resolve itself in his favor, publicly and on his own terms. Let's pull back for a moment, because before anyone writes Pooh Shiesty off as reckless or foolish, it's worth understanding the frustration that reportedly built up underneath all of this. When an artist goes from being completely unknown, grinding with nothing, to charting on Billboard and racking up hundreds of millions of streams, that original contract starts to look like a completely different document. You can see exactly what your music is pulling in. You can see what artists at your same level are reportedly pocketing. And then you look at your actual check, and suddenly that contract doesn't feel like a deal anymore. It starts feeling like a wall. That feeling is real. It's not unique to Pooh Shiesty, and it's not new to this industry. Artists have been walking into lawyers' offices with that exact same burn in their chest for decades. The difference is that every artist who actually won those fights, who actually escaped bad deals and came out with their masters and their freedom, did it through legal channels, through litigation, renegotiation, pressure campaigns, and sometimes just grinding out the term until it expired. Not through a Draco and a printed release form in a Dallas studio. Now, let's bring this back to the money question, because that's really what fans are asking when this album comes up. When people online want to know how much Gucci Mane made off All Eyes on Shiesty, they're looking for a clean number. The honest answer is that there isn't one. Not one we can actually verify, because it depends on variables that aren't public. But what we can do is walk through a realistic hypothetical to show how these things actually break down. Say this album generates $5 million in total royalty qualifying revenue across its first year of streaming and sales. That $5 million doesn't land directly in Gucci Mane's account. The streaming platforms take their cut before a single dollar gets distributed. Atlantic, which sits inside this structure through its distribution and label arrangement with 1017, takes its share based on whatever terms govern that relationship. Then you factor in the recording costs tied to actually making the album, which get applied at the label level before royalties flow outward. Producer points come off next. Publishing income moves through an entirely separate pipeline, flowing through whichever publishing entity controls the underlying compositions on each track. After all of that is stripped away, whatever percentage Pooh Shiesty is owed under his contract represents his royalty share. But even that number only matters if his advance has already been recouped. If there's still an outstanding balance sitting against his account, the artist doesn't see a personal check until that balance is zeroed out first. That's how advances work, and it's a detail a lot of fans don't factor in when they imagine what these deals look like in practice. Now here's what we can say with certainty. When Pooh Shiesty walked into that Dallas studio with a printed contract and allegedly a Draco, he was playing for everything. He wanted to walk out as a free agent with his masters back, his Atlantic relationship intact, and full creative and financial control over his future. That was the goal. That was the bet. What he actually walked out with was a robbery charge, a kidnapping charge, a coerced signature that would never survive legal scrutiny, and an ankle monitor violation stacked on top of all of it. He didn't just fall short of escaping his deal, he allegedly created the exact conditions that allowed 1017 to release music from him while he sat locked down and powerless to stop any of it. Think about that for a second. The move he made to get free may have actually tightened the grip, and this is where it gets genuinely hard to process, because the coerced release was void from the moment it was signed. Courts don't honor agreements extracted at gunpoint, and no label's legal team was ever going to lose that argument. The original 1017 contract stayed in place, completely intact, as if that night in Dallas never happened on paper. Pooh Shiesty didn't escape the deal. He's still inside it, arguably in a worse position than before, with criminal charges added to everything he was already carrying. So, there's Pooh Shiesty sitting inside a federal facility with absolutely no room to maneuver. He can't negotiate. He can't renegotiate. He can't fire his current team, bring in new representation, or take a meeting with a competing label. Every tool a free artist normally uses to improve their position, he's locked out of all of them. He is ours. Completely frozen in place, and 1017 Records is not frozen at all. His trial is currently scheduled for February 2027. If a jury convicts him on federal kidnapping charges, he could be staring down decades behind bars. Think about what that actually means for his music career. That's years more of his recordings sitting inside 1017's catalog, dropped on the label's schedule, generating money on the label's terms, while Pooh Shiesty himself has zero ability to change a single thing about that arrangement. Every month he spends in custody is another month the label holds complete control over everything he recorded under that deal, with no artist present to push back, negotiate, or apply any pressure whatsoever. All Eyes on Shias dropped on August 7th, 2026, more than 6 months after January 10th. Fans showed up for it because his core audience is loyal, and the music itself is genuinely strong. But every stream those 16 tracks rack up, every dollar flowing through that pipeline, Pooh Shiesty watches it happen from behind bars while Gucci Mane's label runs the entire operation. That's not some unfortunate accident or bad timing. That is a contract doing exactly what a contract is designed to do. And here's the bigger point. Because this story is about something far larger than two rappers clashing over paperwork. At its core, this is about the fundamental tension running through the entire music industry. The gap between the artists who actually create the demand and the business structures that profit from it. It's about what happens when an artist feels completely trapped by the very deal that helped launch them into the mainstream. And it's about what happens when that artist chooses the most extreme, most reckless, most illegal possible way to fight back. Strip away the fame, strip away the streaming numbers, the social media clout, the cultural weight. Look at what the actual paperwork says, and ask yourself who really holds the leverage here. Pooh Shiesty allegedly tried to solve a business problem by going further outside the law than almost any artist in recent memory. And what did that get him? It made the original business problem worse, and it created an entirely separate legal disaster that will now define the next chapter of his life. Whatever his contract said on January 9th, 2026, it said the exact same thing on January 11th. The coerced signature didn't change it. The footage of Gucci Mane speaking those words under duress didn't change it. The only things that actually changed were Pooh Shiesty's freedom, his ability to function as a working artist, and the severity of what he's now up against in federal court. He didn't escape the contract, he just added a criminal case on top of it. And that gets to something worth sitting with for a minute. Artists absolutely own their talent. They own their voice, their charisma, their story, the genuine connection they've built with the people who listen to their music. Nobody can sign that away. But contracts determine who controls the recordings. Contracts determine who collects from the revenue streams. Contracts determine who has the actual legal power to decide what gets released, when it gets released, and how the money gets split. Pooh Shiesty had all the cultural power in the world, and Gucci Mane didn't have to do a single dramatic thing to keep hold of everything else. All he had to do was stay alive long enough for the courts to take over. And looking at where things stand right now, that's exactly what went down. With all eyes on Shia sitting on every major streaming platform and a federal trial date locked in for February 2027, the situation has taken on a weight that goes well beyond just music. This isn't a beef that fizzled out or got swept under the rug. It's playing out in real time, in front of judges and juries, with careers and freedom on the line. So, what do you make of all this? Was justice served, or is the story still way too messy to call? Drop your honest take in the comments, because this conversation is just getting started. And if you're here for the real breakdowns, the ones that actually go beneath the surface of the biggest stories in hip-hop, then you already know what to do. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you're never the last one to find out when we drop. We've got more coming, and you don't want to be sleeping on it. See you in the next one.